Welcome to a new week. I'm Jared. This is Jake. This is Chin Straps and Baseball Caps, or the two Mormon Boys, whichever one you want to call us.
No, don't call us the Mormon Boy.
Why not? I like the Mormon Boys.
No, don't call us the Mormon Boy.
I like the Mormon Boys. Anyway, this week we're gonna talk a little bit about challenges. And Jake had a really good analogy talking about the 49ers that he's going to talk about. So,
Are you still a 49ers fan?
yeah.
Not really.
I'm a Patriots fan. That's a lie. I'm not a Patriots fan at all. I'm not an NFL fan.
I was teasing a friend the other day. I said, I need to throw out my Dodger hats now and get an Astros cap.
Yeah,
Well, I get accused.
How many Dodgers hats do you have? Let's be honest here.
A lot. I get accused of being a fair weather fan no matter what I wear. So I can wear a 49ers hat for 18 years and then they're good for 3 and everybody accuses me of being a fair weather
That's
fan.
how it works.
Yep.
I mean, unless you're a
Browns fan?
a Browns fan.
Or a Bengals fan? Like your boss or whatever?
My old coworker. Yeah. Still can't believe that.
Glutton for punishment. Okay, so the analogy that we are going to talk about today is building up your life brick by brick. And a little bit of background, so I am a 49ers fan. I've been a 49ers fan my whole life, so...
He's also a huge Colin Kaepernick fan.
No, that's not true. But it has nothing to do with anything outside of what he was capable of on the field.
He was good for a year.
Yeah.
And then people figured him out.
Yep. Fair enough. In the Super Bowl. He had some decent years after that. But anyway, so a little background on the 49ers. They have Joe Montana, who most everybody should know. He got hurt, and Bill Walsh traded for Steve Young, who was on a terrible Buccaneers team, and told him, hey, we'll bring you in and you'll play. Joe's back is hurt, or I think it was his back.
Did Young come from the other league as well?
Well, he went to the USFL first.
Yeah.
For the LA Express. And then he got drafted by the Buccaneers in the supplemental draft or whatever, when the USFL folded. So anyway, he goes and gets Young and tells him, you're going to play. And then Montana came into training camp looking totally healthy. And it's one of my favorite parts about like the NFL films, Football Life on Steve Young.
Right. Which
we'll quote from a little bit on this episode, but he said he looked over at Bill Walsh, and Bill Walsh just shrugged his shoulders. Like, sorry.
Too bad.
So anyway, he trades for Young. Young kind of sits in the shadows for a couple of years. He plays a little bit here, a little bit there, starts some games, but Montana wins 2 more Super Bowls. And then Young takes over, wins another Super Bowl. And they were still, even though they didn't win more than that one Super Bowl, they were still, in the top echelon of NFL teams. Well, the owners trade hands, kind of have a different management style, rebuild the team in a different way after Young retired. So Jeff Garcia took over afterwards, and he was adequate. He was a pretty good quarterback, but he wasn't great. But they didn't focus on building the team around him, so Young didn't really have an offensive line. They didn't really address that. For a few years, that team did not live up to its history for a long time, and so they kind of let it fall apart. Several coaches, several GMs later, they kind of had a foundation of good players, and then hire Jim Harbaugh. He comes in, coaches them up. They're 3 straight NFC championships, 1 Super Bowl, and then they let him go. And it's argumentative about whether or not that was a good decision or not. But so clean house finally after 2 more years of 2 different coaches, and they hire John Lynch, who was working at Fox Sports doing broadcasts. He's their new GM, so he doesn't have any history of it. And then Kyle Shanahan, who's the offensive coordinator for the Falcons, and they were in the Super Bowl. And they start trying to rebuild this team. And Lynch coined the phrase, and he probably took it from other people, but because you can see it around, but brick by brick. And that's kind of the idea that we wanted to run with today, is brick by brick. That they weren't going to take shortcuts. There's a lot of analogies that you can take from that, and I think the brick by brick thought process is extremely pertinent, especially to football. And you can speak more to that, I'm sure, but the way of how a football game unfolds, if your goal is to get positive yards on every play, have manageable yards so you can get first downs, score touchdowns. Sometimes you have to call runs that aren't going to get you any of that. And they do it unintentionally. And I was talking to my wife about that, actually, that football is like one of the few sports where this is going to fail. Baseball is kind of the sacrifice bunt. Same idea, but there's a goal embedded in both of those of looking for success. And so for football, you run the ball up the middle, even if you only get a yard or two, because you're trying to open up the game later for other running plays or passing plays and different things like that.
Right.
So
it's all strategy.
Yeah, building up even your playbook brick by brick to kind of open up. There's really no shortcuts in football. And I think we talked about the Bengals, the Browns, these teams that have probably historically tried to take a lot more shortcuts than they should have, and they've never really been good. And so Here you have Lynch, and who knows how successful the 49ers will be in rebuilding. But they end the season last year on a 5-game winning streak. Things are looking good, and they keep that adage of brick by brick. That's their theme. They highlight it on everything when they announce a signing of a free agent or whatever. So maybe you can talk more about that, and as far as how plays unfolded in your playing career, Uncle Rico.
Yeah. Well, it's fun to think about that and think about the times that a play would come in, and you kind of, as a player, you're like, what in the world? Because your goal as a player is always, gain yards, first down, touchdown, whatever it is. And to have a play come in and be like, okay, you have to trust the process. You have to trust your coaches. You got to trust the people around you that they know better than you what they're doing.
Yeah.
And like I said, when those plays came in, you're like, okay, here we go. And then they'd fail. And they'd be like, well, that sucked. That didn't work. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden another play would come in and you'd go for 25 yards or throw a touchdown pass or something like that. And so all of a sudden you start to think, okay, you start to kind of buy into the process. This is going to work. One of the coaches that I had in my life talked about just slowly taking bits out of the opponent's armor. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, whether it's an opponent on a opposing team or opponents in your own life, whether it be disease or whatever it is, that as you keep taking little bits out of your opponent's armor, you're building yourself up, and you're setting yourself up for victory. You're setting yourself up to score, to win, whatever it is that you need. And I think that's an important thing to realize in life, that sometimes we have to fail in order to build ourselves up. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, and I was thinking about, kind of taking on the idea of the 49ers. So that was their first year last year with Lynch and Shanahan and how they were trying to build that team. And I remember them talking about no shortcuts. There's no shortcuts to success. We have to rebuild this thing. I mean, they were depleted talent-wise. They had to rebuild this thing. They had a big free agent signing class last year. Mm-hmm. A smaller one this year, but spent a lot of money. But one of the things that also came up that I was thinking about is opportunities. So in my own life, I have a couple situations that are kind of unfolding where there may be some really critical opportunities here. And if you look at kind of your life and the challenges that you're facing, it can kind of feel daunting as you're kind of staring at the job that you have to do in front of you. But every once in a while you have a key opportunity that comes up that can kind of help you, launch forward a little bit. And I think for them it was getting Tom Brady's backup quarterback. So Jimmy Garoppolo, they had a rookie quarterback that they were playing, not intentionally. I don't think they imagined drafting him, that they would be playing him by the end of the year.
Right.
And he was just taking a beating because he's, new to the league. So the game's faster for him. Everything's faster for him. And they don't have the greatest offensive line. They needed some work on it. And he was taking a beating. And then they have an opportunity to trade for Tom Brady's backup. They do it, and he comes in and wins 5 straight games. It's not I wouldn't call it a shortcut. It's an opportunity. They wanted a franchise quarterback. They weren't going to try and jump the gun and take a chance on somebody that was too risky. Instead, they traded for someone that was, it cost them a second-round draft pick. Not a big deal. And at the end of the year, if he wouldn't have panned out, they can let him go, and away he goes.
Right.
But this was a situation where they grasped an opportunity and they ran with it. And I think that so many times the tasks in front of us feel so daunting. And you kind of start building it up brick by brick, layer by layer, piece by piece. And then these opportunities shoot out of nowhere. And you grasp them and you run with them. And then it launches you ahead in your task. And I thought that was an interesting thing that had happened to them that I thought was so pertinent to life. And especially to me, who, recently there's some things that have felt really daunting. And there's some opportunities that look to be coming my way that can help launch me forward in ways that I didn't imagine before.
Yeah, and I think being prepared for those opportunities is probably the most important thing. And also being prepared to allow a little bit of growing pain. There's sometimes we have to do things that we don't necessarily want to do. I mean, I spent almost 9 years in banking as my career. I hated it. It was not fun for me. I just didn't like it. I mean, it was a good job, good career. And then I had an opportunity come forward with a new job, and I took the job. And it's not necessarily a job that I wanted to do forever, but it got me out of banking, and it has opened up other doors for me, which I think is crucial in everything that we do. And talking about opportunities that kind of just come our way, maybe not even expecting, you think about the Utah Jazz, Donovan Mitchell. Mm-hmm. I mean, here's a guy who, great player, but oh my gosh, he is unreal. I mean, he has resurrected that team. First, the Jazz have the terrible news that, what is his name?
Gordon Hayward.
Gordon Hayward leaves, goes to the Celtics, and, we're all kind of bummed about it. But if you think about it, when Gordon Hayward was drafted by the Jazz, he got booed. They didn't want him. The fans didn't want him.
That's true.
And all of a sudden he comes in being a great asset and kind of, setting the stage for the Jazz to pick up a Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
Being prepared. I think that's key. Being prepared to build it brick by brick and be willing to wait. Play the waiting game.
Yeah.
Be patient.
When I think in a lot of situations of, kind of the theme or the idea that I wanted to get from this podcast was help people that were facing challenges, kind of relate them to sports because it's relatable to us, but also that there's other ideas or things that are relatable. But the point that I think is so key to the brick by brick thing is that you have these tasks in front of you. It can be rebuilding a team, building your career, going to school, different things like that. It can also be challenges that come out of the blue, and it's this daunting task that you see in front of you. And so I had the thought of, I liked the way that you put it. You're taking out pieces of the armor. The way I thought of it was, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's taking on a situation that you come face to face with, and you're going, okay, how do I address this? Because so often I'll have something come my way, and it kind of hits me, and I look at it, and I'm going, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. This is impossible to do. I have no idea how I'm going to do it. And then you kind of start to formulate a plan. Going back to football, you formulate your game plan. You start attacking it piece by piece. And the thing that I was comparing or thinking about football is you can sit there and run a play, and after it's over, you go, well, that didn't work.
Yeah.
We're going to go, let's do something else. And you can adjust on the fly. Well, it's almost, life every day. You can come home and go, well, that didn't work. I've got to adjust the way I'm doing this because this isn't working. And so I think you can face it you can relate it to any kind of situation that you want to, whether it's, like I said, whether it's work or school or family or whatever, or maybe it's just some, stumbling block that comes along your way that you have to get over. And so there was a quote by Steve Young. So Steve Young resonated with me a lot as a kid, and I didn't really understand why. I kind of explained that a little bit in the last podcast, but kind of knowing what he went through, anxiety-wise, and kind of the things that he had to overcome and how it drove him to be better. Well, he had this quote, and I can't remember if this is from his book or if it's from the NFL Life or Football Life, episode that broadcasted on NFL Network, but addressing challenges. He says you got to go through it. You can't go around it. If you go around it, you cheat yourself. And I'm thinking of all the times in my life where I face these challenges, and it would just be easier in the short run to say, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to walk away from it. But in the long run, if you go through it, you get stronger, you get better at it. You learn how to address these problems, and you can overcome them so much easier in the future. That allows you to kind of climb the mountain. It's, your summit. How do you summit? Step by step. And then it's important to also step off the mountain to see what you just accomplished. And I thought that was a good analogy in the brick by brick, kind of phrase or catchphrase.
Yeah, I really like that, especially when you're going through those challenges, that you make sure to take them head on. One of my favorite stories about any football team really has to do with BYU. I'm a huge BYU homer, so I get it. But I believe it was in their 1984 when they won the national championship. I believe it was that game. They went into the locker room and they were kind of down on themselves. And one of the linemen stood up and he gave this quote to the team. He said, "When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you trudge seems all uphill, when funds are low and debts are high, when you want to smile but you have to sigh, when your cares are pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit." And I really like that. Sometimes in life we need a little rest. We need a halftime, We need a timeout. But we can't quit. We move forward with whatever it is that we're doing in whatever direction we're going, with the belief and the hope that no matter what we're doing, our path will be guided by a sense of, the fact that you matter, that people care about you, or in a much higher perspective, that there is a higher being or someone out there that is looking out for you. If we quit, we give up on ourselves. We give up on those around us, and then we fail. The 49ers, they're not quitting. They're building brick by brick, or attempting to. Mm-hmm. And if they didn't do that, not only are they giving up on themselves, but they're giving up on all of their fans, mm-hmm. their players, their shareholders. Everyone. So they're going to continue to build brick by brick and do their very best to be better the next year. And I think that plays into every single team, whether it be college, professional, even down to the peewee level, because there's always a stakeholder, and it's not always just the coach or the players, their parents, their fans, their teammates, their whatever it is. You consider the stakeholders and you consider, okay, how am I going to improve myself, my team, our abilities to help my stakeholders?
The stakeholder can even be yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's ethics 101, right? In any ethical situation, you look at the facts, you consider the stakeholders, you do all of that, and the stakeholders can always be you. It's not just the people that are investing money into it or anything like that. It can be anyone.
Well, I liked what you said, like everybody needs a halftime, and I think the people that have learned to handle challenges the best. I went through the interview process recently about, going through a job, and I had an interesting question asked, when do you know when it's time to quit? And it's, the kind of the background of what they were asking is, when are you working on a project and it just has to be good enough? And I was like, that's a tough answer to give, because it's really, really difficult to understand. I think it's hard. That's where people, I think, struggle the most. But I think the other thing is the people that have learned how to be the healthiest are the ones that know when to take a step back and walk away. And okay, what's done is done. If it's a project at school or at work or at home or whatever, okay, I've got to walk away, and it's got to be good enough for right now. And I'm going to go catch my breath. I'm going to readjust. I'm going to figure out how to attack this again. And then I go forward again. But, you have to be, for me, it's been so important. I've had to learn in my own life when it's time to walk away for a few minutes. When do I know that I've reached my limit and I can't handle anymore?
Right.
And so take a minute, walk away, and I'm sure coaches deal with this all the time. When's the best time to call a timeout? You have 3.5. When do I use them in football?
Right.
You have 3.5. When do I use them? Well, you can waste them on situations where you screwed up and your players aren't ready because of something you did. You can use it on, but a lot of it, the best, most time managed coaches are the ones that use it when the momentum swung, and you need a minute to reconfigure, figure out how you're going to address this, and then go back at it. And I think that's, in my life, it's been really crucial for me, and it's such a learning process to this day of knowing when to step away for a few minutes, walk away from a situation, and regather myself in order to go back and take another shot at it, or learn from my mistakes, or whatever the case may be.
I think that's a great lesson to learn, and I live a lot of my life on music. When something goes wrong in my life or something's hard or whatever, I try to find the best songs to relate to, whether it be rap or
country. You love country
or whatever. But one of the hardest challenges that I went through recently, I turned to a song by, and I'm going to bring him up, Jimmy Buffett, and that's because I'm going to his concert.
Are they going to say Justin Bieber?
Justice Bieber.
You love Justin Bieber, don't you?
I do not.
You're lying to me.
So this is a song by Jimmy Buffett. It's called Breathe In, Breathe Out, Move On. And the first part, it says, I bought a cheap watch from a crazy man floating down canal. It doesn't use numbers or moving hands. It always just says now. Now you may be thinking that I was had, but this watch is never wrong. And if I have trouble, the warranty said, breathe in, breathe out, move on. And I love this song because he wrote it for the people affected by Hurricane Katrina. And he talks about how if a hurricane doesn't leave you dead, it will make you strong. Don't try to explain it. Just nod your head, breathe in, breathe out, move on. I mean, these people that were affected by Hurricane Katrina, or most recently, the people in Texas and Florida and, other places that were affected by these hurricanes that came up, Puerto Rico, was devastated. What do you do in that case? You have a task that seems absolutely impossible. How are you going to do it? Your home's gone, your neighbor's home's gone, you have no food, you have no water. It truly seems impossible. Yet, some people looked at it as impossible, and that's just the attitude they took. But some people probably took the attitude of nod your head, breathe in, breathe out, move on. What do I do to rebuild? What do I do to fix this problem? How do I come up with a solution? I can't turn to anybody else. I got to figure this out on my own right now. Other people are going to be there to help, but how do I fix it right now? How do I put a roof over my family's head?
Yeah.
Where do I go? What do I do? And there's always, in those moments of extremities, there's always a solution. There's always an opportunity for you to, use the power of your brain, power of your heart, let other people in, things like that. And I really like that. I mean, you think of someone who uses the power of imagination, Walt Disney. I mean, his whole empire is built on imagination, right? He said, all adversity I've had in my life, all my troubles and obstacles have strengthened me.
Yeah.
This is a guy that came from, I don't know his story all that well, but he was born in was it Kansas? Lived in Kansas?
Yeah, I think so.
I think his dad was pretty abusive to him.
I don't think it was like super abusive. I think it was typical in that time.
Right.
I don't know. I don't remember the story.
But I think it shaped him. It molded him to who he was, and the fact that he wanted to build a kind of utopia to his children, to his family, and to people that he cared about. He took challenges, he breathed in, he breathed out, and he moved on, and he went forward.
Well, and I think that's a big deal about looking at the people that have had success in their lives. It's not that necessarily that I think everybody looks for the quick fix of, quick get rich quick scheme.
Right.
How the shortcut to this or shortcut to that, weight loss, whatever. There's a million different things of, this will be a shortcut for you. You'll get this. I think the people that have the consistent success in life, as far as my studies have gone, It's really been an opportunity that's come up. They take advantage of it. They grasp it by the horns, and then they go.
Right.
And it's not necessarily that they're taking they're not getting a get-rich-quick scheme. They took a chance on an opportunity.
Right.
And so often we have a hard time seeing that. And especially in a situation like the people that can look at adversity and let it just beat them down. And I've been in that position before.
I think we all have.
Right. And I think, one of the hard lessons I had to learn was learning to be humble enough to ask for help. That was very difficult for me to learn. And you have to be realistic and say, okay, I'm in this situation. I can't get out of it by myself. I need some help here. And then you get help and you're better for it. But I think the people that try and jumpstart or feel like, everybody else gets a shortcut, or, there's whatever the myriad of different options there are about reasons why you would kind of fold up or curl up into the fetal position and quit. The reality is if you learn from your adversity and you take it head on and you kind of take your moment to take your deep breath, figure out where you want to go with it, those are usually the people that, in my experience, have the most success.
Right.
And I think you can look at the way that, you have 32 NFL teams. One of them win a Super Bowl every year. The ones that win the Super Bowl rarely ever take a shortcut. I mean, you look at the Eagles last year that they had to rebuild after Chip Kelly got fired. And they
even mid-season they had to put in a backup quarterback.
Yeah, backup quarterback comes in who nobody wanted.
Right.
And we'll probably share his story in another podcast because he had a really cool answer to these types of experiences. But, you look at their situation and the way that they had to handle adversity. I mean, I was watching I'm not an Eagles fan per se, but I was watching that game against the Rams. And is it Carson Wentz? Yeah, Carson Wentz dives for a touchdown. I'm going, what a stupid play. I mean, he didn't even need it. It's such a stupid game. He tears his ACL. And all of a sudden, I was thinking their season's over. They have no shot at winning the Super Bowl.
Right.
And I would have thought at the time that they were probably one of the favorites. And you put Nick Foles in, and they gave him such a short leash for the rest of the regular season. And then they just opened the playbook wide for him. And, part of going back to the 49ers, I remember Shanahan on one of the first games, they signed Brian Hoyer to come play quarterback for him. It didn't end up working out. But I remember he threw a couple interceptions. And he came to the sideline and he was discouraged. And Shanahan said, look, you got to get over it. I'm not changing the way I'm calling plays because you got to get out of your own head.
Right.
Kind of let's go. Like, don't let this tear you down. We don't have time for that.
Put your big boy pants on and let's go to work. You
got to, and he did. Yeah. I mean, he had a couple of decent games. They ended up letting him go, and I think that was the right decision. But, in that situation when he was facing adversity, he'd screwed up again. He had a second big mistake, and his coach goes, look, I'm not changing anything here. You've got to learn to figure this out and attack it, so let's go. And it was an important lesson, I'm sure, for him, and the team grew from that, and it was good for them overall, I believe.
Well, and that's interesting to think about because here you have a coach saying, I'm not changing things. You cannot quit. You've got to just get up and you got to go. I think it was Stephen King that said, talent is a wonderful thing, but it won't carry a quitter. I mean, that's very interesting to me. You have some of the most talented people, and I talked about this last time, talented athletes that come in and then they just quit. They get down on themselves and they give up. Well, talent isn't going to carry a quitter. That doesn't work. So as long as we, continually focus on building ourselves up, building those up around us, brick by brick, doing the things that will improve not just ourselves. I think that's important to realize. We're not just here to improve ourselves. We're here to help improve others, improve those around us. That's what being part of a team is. I think our podcasts are talking about life's challenges using sports. And for the majority of it, we're talking about team sports. Mm-hmm. The only non-team sport that I even enjoy is golf. And even there, you've got a team. You have a caddy that helps you. You've got people around you supporting you.
Your coach.
You've got
spouse
trainers.
Often.
Exactly. And so even in a non-team sport, per se, you still have a team. And you still have to build yourself up brick by brick.
Well, life is the same way. You don't have, even the most lonely person in the world can't claim they don't have a team. They can think they don't,
Right.
but they can't legitimately make that claim. It's because it's a human condition. People actually care about whether or not other people fail or succeed. And it's the reason why, I don't really like to talk about anxiety or social problems or anything like that. And I'm by far not an expert at anything. But the success that I've had in my life and the success that I know I will have won't be based on my talents. It'll be based on work and the ability to address a situation. So I'm sitting here we're doing a podcast addressing a situation that's not my favorite thing to address.
Right.
But I see a problem where I see people around me kind of falling victim to it and succumbing to it and kind of curling up into a fetal position and giving up, and it makes me sad. I don't want to see that. So I'm trying to use the work that I have, the recognition that I have of what we can do to kind of address that and change that. And so, if you ever feel like you don't have a team, it's not true.
Right.
There are people everywhere. There will be someone that cares about you and whether or not, they may not know it because they may not know your story. But, you're never really ever alone. So there's always someone that would care, and you just need to be able to reach out and look for it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, always keep your eyes open for those around you, for yourself, all of that. Build yourself brick by brick. Go out, hug your family, tell them you love them, help a neighbor.
Yeah.
Do something for those in need. Do something for yourself.
Just remember, it's brick by brick, and take advantage of the opportunities when they come. So,
absolutely. Well, great. I think that's a good place to end for the week.
Yep.
So go out, do what you can, people.
Chin straps and baseball caps.
That's right.
Okay, signing off.